What is the difference between a scholar and an intellectual? A scholar is one who submits himself to a tradition, something greater than himself. He's seeking to understand something that other men have understood before him. He's seeking to lay down a way of thinking. And maybe in time he wants to add to that, but his initial thrust is to embrace something, to understand something, to enmesh himself in something greater than himself. By contrast, the intellectual is trying for novelness. He's not trying to do something that's been done before. He's not trying to say something in line with a way of thinking. He's trying to branch out and to be his own romantic thinker or communicator of his own ideas. The intellectual is a rebel on purpose. The scholar is more conservative and humbler because he realizes that thinking and thought don't begin with him. They don't begin with his way of viewing things. They exist outside of himself. They exist in something greater, something grander, something bigger. The intellectuals really started with Jean-Jacques Rousseau. In the first chapter, book 1 of his Confessions, he writes, "I am not made like anyone I have seen. I dare not believe I am made like anyone existing. If I am not better, at least I am quite original." That originality is what the Enlightenment thinkers were looking for, and what people like Jean-Jacques Rousseau and others like him were seeking. Opposed to that are someone like St. Thomas Aquinas, who sought to understand the Christian tradition, who sought to understand the pagan tradition of classical thinkers, and wrote within that. And yes, he added to that. He wanted to add to that. But his initial thrust was not adding something new, but mastering a way of thinking first. Russell Kirk in The Conservative Mind talks about this too. And he defines the intellectual as something directly linked with the notion of a body of schooled and highly rational persons bitterly opposed to established social institutions. So the intellectual is against the established way of thinking on purpose, by principle. And while sometimes that's necessary, it's necessary for the scholar to go against the prevailing thoughts, but the scholar should always seek to go against the prevailing thoughts in the humble belief that what he's doing is in line with a greater tradition. So if you were going against some of the modern philosophies of our age, but you're hearkening back to Plato, that's still in the spirit of scholarship, of understanding something that's beyond who you are. And I think that's important because, as Edmund Burke very well summed up in his Reform of the Commons speech, the individual is foolish. The multitude, for the moment, is foolish when they act without deliberation, but the species is wise. And when time is given to it, as a species, it almost always acts right. That's the great principle of conservatism. Why should you embrace what's been handed down instead of just coming up with something new? Well, it's because the chances of that new idea being wrong are greater than the chances of something that stood the test of time. They're both chances. They're both a risk. But I think it's a greater risk to risk yourself on something that's beyond you, above you, and has been pre-existed to you, than to just jump in willy-nilly with a new idea. Now, of course, it always takes wisdom and rationality to determine what tradition is the best tradition to nail your flag to, right? But at the beginning, it's wise to think through how someone else thought through first, and then aspire to maybe add to that, or take something away, or understand something. But be a student before a teacher. And that is at the heart of classical education as well. In classical education, we're not seeking to teach a student how to express himself, although sometimes they need to express themselves. But we're seeking first to master a way of thinking, to master understanding of logic, to master philosophy, to master Latin and foreign languages, to master how to speak well, to use the tools of eloquence and rhetoric to put together a way of thinking, to put together a speech. That's not something that we're just saying, okay, go out on your own, become an intellectual, think up some great thought, and let us know. It's like, no, these are the tools you have. These are the principles of rhetoric. These are the great ideas. Go understand them. Spend 10, 20 years trying to understand the great ideas and mesh yourself in the great tradition. And once you've done that, once you've enmeshed yourself within the great tradition, maybe you might have something to add to it. But first, be humble. First, submit yourself to an intellectual tradition. There's multiple ones, there's multiple strands, and of course, it gets weaved and interweaved together, and it takes wisdom to be able to choose, where to put your thinking. But I think a good rule of thumb is to look to that which built great things, and look to that which has had an enduring emphasis. Look at the bottom of the books. Where did all the footnotes lead? And follow their trail.